This is the second of two videos about common failure modes in process-based management. Although there are many ways for process-based management to fail to live up to expectations, the good news is that there are many more ways to avoid that happening. We can predict the failure modes most likely to happen in each organization, and we can plan to avoid them, or at least mitigate their effects. In this second video, we discuss ineffective support, doing too much too quickly, enthusiasm fade out, and being seen as a new problem rather than a solution. Let's explore that a little more. Another 4 common failure modes to discuss in this second video on the topic. As before, I'll describe the failure pattern and then suggest ways it can be avoided. We need to keep in mind that if we're rolling out process-based management, then we're making lots of change for lots of people. It's not just the people in the office of BPM, not just the process owners, but pretty much everyone is going to be involved in some way, or they would at least worry that they should be involved, or things are happening that they're not keen on. So we have to think about support. We have to make sure there's a lot of support. And then for those people that are directly involved, those functional managers for whom things are changing, for people involved in process improvement analysis and then implementation of change, there's a lot going on. We're trying to reimagine the way in which we think of the organization. That's not something that's easily done, and we shouldn't underestimate the need for support. So I like to think of a capability development plan. So we'll say for each of the areas in which we think people need experience and expertise and different cohorts, different parts of the organization, think perhaps of a matrix that might have as its rows the 7 enablers of BPM, and maybe the columns then of the different cohorts, different groups, different types of people in the organization, perhaps people at different levels as well. And what is it that we need them to be able to do? What experience and expertise to be able to give them so that they can participate as we want them to in the whole process-based management activity. So it's got to be an active support plan. We can't just sit by the phone and wait for someone to call. We have to second guess what people need. We have to preempt it. We have to be out there actively building capability. And of course, all the time, being very clear about who does what and who doesn't do what, where are the roles, where are the overlaps, be very clear about all of these new roles and these new ways of thinking, and good communication. Almost every problem we can identify within process-based management will be helped by better communication. So transparent feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But let's make some emphasis on the good. We want to demonstrate success. So we need to, support isn't just going to happen. Support's not a help desk, being passive and waiting for the phone to ring. Support is people actively out there helping, seeking ways to help. I think it's easy to try and do too much too soon. So I would rather, for example, pick 3 processes and start to get them under active management, get the circles turning, if you've seen that video. I'd rather do that with 3 than 30. I'm not saying 30 doesn't work. I've seen places where it has worked, but I think it's doing it the hard way. So I would much prefer that kind of incremental way, not trying to do too much too soon, because it's quite different, it's quite new, and we've got some people who really are under the focus of everyone. So let's design our rollout plan and the operational plan to give us the best chance of being successful and not trying to do too much too soon. Demonstrating success is always going to be the best way to solve most of these problems, and that incremental rollout will help with that. So we're just doing a few at a time, and once we get on top of the first 3, say, then we can do another 3, and then once we've got 6 processes under active management, everything's going pretty well, maybe the next tranche could be 10 processes. So we get better at it and we can start adding more, and we're only ever, of course, going to be talking about the high impact processes. So the rollout and the way in which we're going to introduce process-based management to the organization can be quite agile, it can be very active, and of course, again, communicate. So let's not try and do too much too soon. Let's not overwhelm people with change. Let's try some change, let's get better at it, and then as we get better and better at it, we can do more and more and be more and more successful. And I think we'll get to the same point even faster and with a higher quality result. Enthusiasm fades out. I see this all of the time. Being excited and engaged can be a bit wearing. So we start out a process-based management journey. We're building process architecture, and we're doing some process improvement projects, and we're putting all sorts of process together. Maybe there's some modeling going on. But at some point, it gets to be a bit much. The continuous piece of continuous management, continuous improvement can be a bit wearing. So we need to just know that's going to happen, and we need to plan for it. We need to, treat people well. We need to understand the difficulties people are going through, particularly those, perhaps the small group, the office of BPM, perhaps those people who are central to the whole rollout. There's some pressure on them as things are starting. So what can we do? Well, we need to think about how people, the various cohorts of people, how we're going to engage them, what an active engagement plan might look like. Lots of feedback, again, lots of communication, and particularly about success stories. Make it clear what the compelling reason is. Make it clear that even if this feels a bit challenging right now, there are great benefits to be had. It is worth doing. And then we can do other things. Just set up, for example, some special interest groups. People who are interested in a particular aspect of the process-based management world. Maybe they can be meeting regularly. Maybe it's just some online thing. Maybe it's a body of knowledge that you can make available. But give people the opportunity to stay excited and stay engaged. And this can happen so easily as well. When people start thinking process-based management is a new problem, not a solution to an existing problem, then we've got a problem. So we have to be very careful about that. If it starts to look negative, to feel negative, then we might be in a spiral dive. So let's preempt that for sure. And I think it's so important that we explain the why. What is the compelling reason for this organization at this time to be doing process-based management? Why did we even start? Okay, maybe things are a bit rocky at the moment, but what's the compelling reason? What's the touchstone we can go back to? Say, okay, well, let's push on because this is worth doing. And we simply need to be able to deal with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's often invoked when we start talking about process improvement in organizations, because sometimes people equate that with job loss, or they equate it with a change in their autonomy or their contribution, and it doesn't feel good. So we need to deal with that, because it doesn't have to be like that. So again, it's communication. We explain the plan, and what are the guardrails? What are the things that we've got in place to stop this going off track? What are the overall governance mechanisms on the rollout? What is it we would do if we needed to roll back? Is that possible? Yes, it is. Again, we're doing an incremental rollout, so we can do that. So just protect people's understanding of what's at stake here, why we're doing it, and what may, if something goes wrong, what we can do about it. And again, we communicate success, and perhaps we want to reward success. Now, there are many good ways of rewarding success that don't involve large chunks of cash going to people. So we need to think about that. How can we celebrate our successes? So we've had another 4 common failure modes here in this video. Poor support, trying to do too much too soon, the enthusiasm fade out, and being seen as a problem, not a solution. And in the first video in this series, we spoke about having inadequate process governance, poor executive commitment or not sustained executive commitment. We spoke about trying to avoid having the office of BPM doing it all, and about having good, regular, well-targeted multi-channel communications. So they're the 8 common failure modes that I've addressed in these 2 videos. I'm sure there are more. There are plenty of ways to go wrong, aren't there? But the good news is that there are many ways in which we can avoid those problems. And this is a kind of summary here of the things we might do to address all 8 of those potential failure modes. So communication is so important, isn't it? And it's transparent and it's targeted, it's multi-channel. There needs to be a plan. It's not just saying hello to people when you meet them. Communication is a very deliberate thing. And by the way, the absence of communication is also a very deliberate communication. So we don't imagine that everybody knows what's going on. We need to be very clear and have a plan to tell them. Be very clear about the new roles, particularly process owner. And if the office of BPM is new, that kind of internal support group, be very clear about what people do and don't do and what impact that has on other people's job definitions. And I think we can design for zero conflict. We can identify, we can second guess what all the points of conflict will be and say, okay, How do we design our process of process management so that there is no conflict? How do we minimize that? How do we get some red flags about developing conflict so that we can intervene? We need to support everyone. Effective process-based management will touch everyone in the organization. That's inevitable because we're going to be changing lots of processes. We're going to be thinking differently about how we manage the organization. So it's going to be quite different. So lots of people need support. And therefore, we also need to build the capability, and I just mean the experience and the expertise of people throughout the organization to participate in process-based management. They're the experts in the processes, so we need to be able to do that. And support their engagement. Make it possible. Let them have access to information. Let them have access to presentations, to feedback groups. Let them have any way that tells them more, lets them participate, encourages them to engage with the whole idea. And the whole fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the FUD. We just need to deal with that. When we start talking about process and process improvement, people often look around the room to say who's going to lose their job. And that shouldn't be what we're talking about in the main. But if it is, deal with it. But let's get that on the table. Let's try and help people through all of this. And, the thing that's going to make us successful is just demonstrating success. Success breeds success, doesn't it? So we want to be very clear about where it's working and what the benefits are that are being delivered. So I think if we can do these kinds of things, then we don't have to have common failure modes. Failure is not mandatory. It's only going to happen if we don't plan to avoid it.